issue a show cause notice in circumstances more frequently than the UK might take the action to issue a determination, because a show cause notice is simply raising questions, whereas a determination is we formed a conclusion. Right.
And in your enforcement manual, in terms of administrative action, it makes reference that you another important part of the offering and holding as part of the process to have a show cause conference, and you had a show cause conference in May or earlier this month with Tiger. Is that right? Is that the case?
There was evidence to that, yes.
How often does something go from a show cause notice to a show cause conference? Is that an inevitable part of a show cause notice, or not?
It's an option open to the recipient of the notice. There's no obligation for them to participate, and there's no legal requirement. I think more often than not, show cause conferences are convened, certainly when it's a larger organization. So I think it's probably the norm, but there's no requirement that occur. The requirement is that the written response to the show cause notice precedes the show cause conference.
Sure. That's inevitable, isn't it? You don't have a conference unless you've had the notice.
No, I mean the response.
The response. Yes, sure. You have the response. Can I just, there's an issue, presumably show cause notice is supposed to be confidential. It's something that isn't out there in the public arena as a general rule, is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. McCormick, so
that's correct.
Because of, and the reason for that is why? Because of the perception, because it's still an ongoing investigation?
Well, the issue is here, Senator, that we have quite, as you know, quite wide powers. We can, if we think someone is unsafe, we can stop them flying instantly.
Yeah, entirely appropriately.
Correct. So the show cause notice process and what it represents is just that. It's a process. It's an ongoing process. So what we're really saying about any operator that we put or give a show cause notice to is that we have concerns in these areas. We want to know specifically what you're doing in these areas to address our concerns, but you can continue to operate. So because of, as you say, procedural fairness and natural justice, it's perhaps not in anybody's interest to have that sort of information out there. But I'll stress our primary job is to ensure the safety of the Australian public, and we take whatever action we have to take. We're not draconian about it, but this is a process. So there's no point putting a process out there because it really is not being quite fair to everyone involved.
Does it concern you that the information about the Tiger show cause notice is something that was publicly aired before your investigation was completed?
I don't condone that.
Is there, I mean, for instance, if I asked you, we've heard evidence of stick shaker incidents involving the Dash aircraft. Did Qantas, I mean, are you able to say whether Qantas received a show cause notice for the stick shaker incidents that this committee has heard evidence about?
Qantas did not receive a show cause notice.
In relation to those?
In relation to the stick shakers.
Whether any other major airlines in the last 12 months received show cause notices? You know, major.
I might just defer to Mr.
Well, without naming them, I'm just trying to work out whether any other airlines.
Yes, I got.
I mean, I might be guided by Senator O'Brien.
Well, you know, it's really just seeing the gears running. If you have an answer, if the answer is positive, then you know the story will run. I suppose it will run off the question now, but
I guess to further in response to Senator O'Brien, I'm just trying to work out if there's a leak about one particular entity getting a show cause notice and not, I mean, how do you deal with the issue of clearly there was a leak within the organisation?
My view is that the leak did not come from CASA of any of our activities. And to answer your previous question, Senator, we may need a bit more clarity around the word major. Do you mean high capacity regular public transport operators?
I should use the proper term, high capacity regular public transport.
50 plus.
We'll just take that on notice for a moment. We'll try and get the answer to you before the committee ends. I don't have that information with me.
Right. Do you review, I mean, obviously, perhaps to Dr. Alick, the FAA in the US looks at doing things differently. CAA, our system is fairly unique, is that right, in terms of the process we have for a show cause notice? compared to going straight to a determination.
It's different to the two countries you referred to, yes.
And they're the two. How different are we from Europe?
Well, Europe, in this case, those enforcement-related matters are left to the individual authorities, so it varies amongst the different states. There is no single European approach.
That surprises me. You'd think with the
well, it's
EU...
one area where they haven't unified that at this point, in any rate.
Right. But in terms of other major jurisdictions, how different are we? There's nothing wrong with being different, but I'm just saying, how different are we in terms of enforcement?
Look, in principle, I think they're not all that different. I think most states that operate on a similar political and legal system to ours, including civil jurisdictions in Europe, give people an opportunity to respond to the concerns that the regulator has raised and give them an opportunity to be heard either in a court or a tribunal to contest those findings. So I think in that sense it's not so different. But where I have found consistency, certainly in the United States, and I'm not sure about the UK because it's a slightly different regime, but in Canada, that there is no public notice of this preliminary exercise. In the United States, before action is taken to suspend a certification, they issue what's called a letter of investigation. It's a letter to the holder of the certificate saying, these are our concerns.
Similar to a show cause?
It's similar in that respect. In fact, it is very similar in that it invites the recipient to respond and say what they need to say. There's no obligation to do so, but it certainly puts on the table the issues that are of concern to the FAA. And as a result of their investigation, they will take appropriate action, but the individual or the company involved has an opportunity to respond. They are very clear in their policy manual and in their practice that that action is not made public. It's only after a decision has been made to take action of a particular kind that public notification is given.
And I understand to both you and to Mr. McCormick that your primary paramount brief is the safety of passengers, safety of our skies. I just want to go back finally before I finish up on this. Going back to the ICAO guidelines, there is a potential tension there, isn't there, that unless they've been grossly negligent, unless it's been deliberate, how do you get that balance to encourage people to come forward in the absence of gross negligence or a deliberate act to be upfront with you, to work with you in terms of improving their systems, compared to if they feel that they may be go down a show cause path or any other disciplinary path? How do you get that balance right, where you encourage people but still maintain a safety culture?
Well, I think we maintain that practice, and I may say that certainly in my experience, that's been the approach we've taken long before the term just culture was popular or the manual was present. We do not take a great deal of enforcement action unless and except when it's necessary to do so.
Are you able to indicate, finally for me at this stage, Chair, are you able to indicate what time frame you're looking at from Tiger to determine the Tiger Airways show cause notice?
Any process we have with Tiger will be ongoing, Senator. There is not actually an end date as such. There'll be with any operator that we have concerns with, and we get responses, whether it be via a show cause notice or whether it be via some lesser instrument, or even perhaps even a more serious instrument. That process doesn't end, and we then don't just sort of pack up and go back home. So there will be a point, there'll be timelines given to an organisation by which we expect to see things, and if we don't see things by then we work with it and we reach another decision point.
Okay, so no, I understand. You see it as a continuum.
Our oversight of all operators is a continuum. Yes.
But if a distinct instrument has been issued, such as a show cause notice, at what point, I mean, there must be a point at saying the matters of concern in that show cause notice have been determined one way or the other. In other words, if you had a number of matters that you're concerned about in terms of procedural fairness and obviously from the primary safety perspective, should there be some date on which some point in time where you say these matters have been dealt with either to our satisfaction or not to our satisfaction?
But there is, Senator, yes.
So what does that mean in the context of the issue involving Tiger?
Our issues involving Tiger are that we will put we want to see some specific issues addressed, and we've given timelines by which we expect those issues to be addressed. Some of the things which we may do, and I will stress again, This is an ongoing process. We have not actually reached that point that we're trying to define here yet. So some of them may be that we wish to see a certain organisational structure, for instance, which would be in perpetuitum or until such time as they decided to propose something else to us. So there'll be specifics, and I'm talking now in general terms.
Sure.
There'll be specifics that we want to see done by a specific date. But there'll be some other ones where we may say, we wish you to employ more people in this area, or you don't have enough coverage here, or you have to do this. We would expect that to be ongoing. But the show cause notice process does come to an end, if that's your question.
So, for instance, the general examples you gave, that if a person, you say we want some organisational changes, we want to see more people employed here, or something like that. Well, once an airline has done that, they've taken on extra staff, or they've changed their administrative arrangements, wouldn't that then satisfy that aspect of a show cause notice?
Yes.
Right. Because it seems that, in terms of procedural fairness, if it's hanging over
Understood, Tony. No, that's not the intent. And if we look at, we can look at various operators where we've taken action, some via a show cause notice, some via, as I said, lesser instrument. In all cases, there is a point where we say that's satisfied, that's closed.
So, could we just be clear, there's some indication either the action is escalated or there's an indication to the operator that CASA is then believes that its show cause notice process has been satisfied and the matter is at an end? Is
Yes,
there written information provided?
Back to the operator?
Yes.
Yes, we do generally come
In every
back.
case?
In every case.
In every case.
May I say, Senator, if I may, that the show cause process is part of an administrative process. We're required by law to make a decision within a reasonable time. Now, reasonable depends upon the circumstances. That decision may involve elements, the performance of which are ongoing. We may decide to do nothing at all, but we are obliged to formally notify the recipient of the show cause notice that we have made a decision and this is what our decision is. And that will happen in every case.
So that means that, at first, Senator O'Brien's question, there's at some point in time, from an administrative procedural point of view, you say, if one of the aspects of it, more staff in a particular area or change of administrative arrangements, once they've done that, then you can write back to them saying you've satisfied us in relation to that.
If the decision on our part should be that more staff is required, we will put that in our decision. They are obliged to comply with that decision. If they don't, then that can generate a new process.
To answer your question, Senator, yes.
Sure. So there is some end date, but it depends on what matters have been raised in the show cause notice.
Yes.
Yeah. And are you able to say whether Tiger Airways has cooperated with CASA in relation to the show cause notice?
I think it's fair to say that every operator that has a show cause notice realises the severity of the document, what could come from it, and we very rarely see anyone not cooperate.
So Tiger has been cooperating as far as this show cause notice is concerned?
In the issues that we have raised with Tiger, they have been responding to us. We have been assessing their responses, and it's a two-way communication.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Just following on some questions I asked Tiger, I said that basically a show cause is the second most serious notification you could get from CASA. Maybe a suspension comes between that and cancellation of an AOC, but I'm not sure whether there's a substantial difference between suspension and cancellation. Can you explain that difference?
Do you wish to?
Well, a cancellation, if that's the decision taken, that means that whatever authorization you held no longer exists, subject to an appeal. A suspension simply means that the authorization you hold cannot be used for a period of time in the suspension. That might be temporal, or it might be based on the performance of certain things.
So that may be a lesser thing, although usually taking an operator out of the air is fairly fatal for their business, as I understand it.
Yes, Senator.
So it's a marginal difference then. So having said that,